My name is Jenna Brooks, and until everything changed, I thought I had finally made it. I grew up in a narrow apartment over my uncle's repair shop on the south side of Pittsburgh, where the floors creaked and the winters bit hard. My mother raised me on secondhand books and a belief that if I worked harder than everyone else, I'd get out. School was my escape. I studied with a flashlight under the covers while sirens blared outside our window. By the time I turned 18, I had 3 scholarships, 2 part-time jobs, and a suitcase with a broken zipper holding everything I owned. I didn't have connections or polished confidence, just grit and a GPA that opened doors. I moved to Chicago after college and landed an entry-level position at Bravern Consulting, a place where people wore smart watches that cost more than my entire wardrobe. I said yes to everything, took on extra accounts, volunteered for last-minute presentations, and stayed late while others went home. For 3 years, I climbed. Not fast, not flashy, but steady. I became the go-to for tricky clients. I listened, I solved problems, and I remembered the names of people's kids. Eventually, I was promoted to Senior Client Success Manager, a title that meant longer hours, tougher clients, and the kind of salary that made my mother cry over the phone. I didn't mind the pressure. I actually thrived on it. My job was never just a job. It was proof that I had outrun the life I was born into. And I was good at it. Damn good. So when Bravern set its sights on Langston Freight Systems, I was chosen to lead the pitch. The trip to Texas was intense. 3 straight days of negotiations, 2 hours of sleep per night, and a suitcase full of color-coded briefs. But I nailed it. I walked out of that final meeting knowing we had the deal. It was the biggest contract of the year, and it had my name written all over it. I flew back home exhausted but proud. I couldn't wait to share the news with my team. I thought they'd welcome me with congratulations. I thought I mattered to them. But what waited for me in that marble lobby was nothing like what I imagined. The first thing I saw was my cactus. Its little green arms poked out from the top of a black garbage bag, like it had tried to escape and given up. The pot had cracked, and dry soil dusted the edges of a framed certificate that was smashed against the plastic, like trash. 3 garbage bags. One slumped over like it had been kicked, the others bulging with my life at Bravern binders, a broken keyboard, a half-empty mug I'd forgotten to wash. I stood frozen at the edge of the marble lobby, my carry-on still trailing behind me, the air too cold for August. Then I saw her. Claudia Rains, in stilettos and a crisp navy blazer, was standing with her arms crossed just past the security desk. Her expression was flat, not smug, not apologetic, just indifferent, like she was discussing the weather. She didn't bother to greet me, just glanced at her watch and said it was done. My position had been eliminated. She motioned toward the bags like they were evidence in a crime scene. Behind her, a few co-workers watched from a cautious distance. One of them, Jamie from sales, looked away the moment I made eye contact. Another tightened her lips as if she wanted to say something but thought better of it. No one moved to help. No one asked if I was okay. I couldn't speak. My throat burned. The humiliation hit harder than the jet lag. I'd just given everything I had to that company, and here I was being discarded in front of a mourning crowd like office waste. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared at those bags and that dying cactus and wondered how long it had been sitting there before I arrived. At first, I tried to believe it. Downsizing, restructuring. Whatever corporate term Claudia had tossed at me was like a used napkin. I wanted to think it was business, not personal, that maybe budgets really had shifted, and I'd just been caught in the numbers. But then, the memory surfaced. 2 weeks earlier, late evening, I'd been prepping slide decks in the quiet hum of the empty office. Claudia's door was slightly ajar, and her voice, sharp and amused, drifted into the hallway. She was talking to Nate from legal. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but when you hear your name, you stop breathing. She said I was becoming too visible. The client was requesting me by name, that the spotlight needed to shift. Then she laughed and said it was already handled. I remember feeling cold. I packed up that night trying to shake it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Claudia had always taken credit for my work, but I thought it was part of the game, a trade-off. She rose. I stayed useful. We both won. Standing in that lobby with my cactus in a trash bag and my name scrubbed from the company directory, I realized how wrong I'd been. This wasn't downsizing. This was subtraction. Quiet, calculated elimination. Not because I failed, but because I succeeded too well. Because I was no longer invisible. Because the clients noticed me more than they noticed her. The bitterness crept in slowly. Not rage, not yet. Just a hollow ache of betrayal, the kind that settles deep when you finally see something for what it is. I wasn't collateral damage. I was the target. And Claudia made sure the hit was public. I spent the night curled up on the old couch in my mother's living room, still in my work clothes, staring at the ceiling. She made tea, said gentle things, but I couldn't absorb any of it. I was too drained, too stunned by how fast everything had unraveled. That morning, I opened my laptop to look over the severance package fingers hovering above the digital signature line. The non-compete clause stared back at me cold and final like a door slamming shut. I was about to click when my phone buzzed with an unknown number from a Chicago area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end was deep familiar. It was Mr. Langston. I sat up straight before I could stop myself. He said he'd been trying to reach me through Bravern, but they told him I'd left suddenly for a new opportunity. My mouth went dry. I told him that wasn't true. I hadn't left. I was fired. There was a long pause, then he asked if I could meet him for lunch the next day. He didn't sound angry. He sounded confused, curious, maybe even concerned. I said yes before I thought it through. When the call ended, I just sat there staring at my phone like it might ring again. Claudia had lied to him. She told him I'd walked away right after securing their biggest deal of the year. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But something shifted inside me. A small click, like the lock on a door I hadn't realized I could open. Maybe this wasn't over. Maybe I wasn't finished. Maybe, just maybe, getting fired wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of something else entirely. After lunch with Mr. Langston, I didn't waste a second. The second I walked out of that restaurant, I pulled out my phone and called Ezra, a friend from college, who now worked in employment law. I told him everything. He didn't hesitate. We got to work that same afternoon. I filed the paperwork to register my business name. Ironbird Solutions. I picked it because ironbirds fly when no one expects them to, and because nothing about me was going to stay grounded. Ezra helped me review the non-compete language. Technically, it was there, but he said they'd have a hard time enforcing it after a termination, especially one as sudden and undocumented as mine. While he handled the legal side, I got to work on the rest. I stayed up late at my mom's kitchen table with my laptop open and my notes scattered everywhere. I rebuilt my client list from memory, not just names and companies, but birthdays, project specs, pain points, and quirks. I remembered what they hated hearing on calls and what made them feel heard. I signed up for a basic web builder, kept the design clean and sharp, and wrote every line of copy myself. I didn't mention Bravern. Didn't need to. My experience spoke for itself. My services were clear implementation strategy, client retention systems, and high-stakes transition support. Within 72 hours, I had a live website, a business bank account, a formal business entity, and one massive client waiting for my first deliverable. I didn't sleep much that week, but I wasn't tired. I was lit from within by something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. I bought a new suit. Dark gray, sharp shoulders, subtle pinstripes. The kind of suit you wear when you know you'll be walking into the same building where they once threw your cactus into a garbage bag. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted them to see what they lost. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted them to realize I was never the one who didn't belong. I was the one they couldn't keep. I walked through the front doors of Bravern at 9:55 a.m., 5 minutes ahead of the implementation meeting. The same marble floors stretched out before me, polished to a mirror shine. The same security guard sat behind the desk, but this time, he stood when he saw me. He didn't ask why I was there. I handed him a business card with Ironbird Solutions printed clean across the top. He read it, nodded once, and gave me a visitor badge without a word. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt different. My heart beat steadily. My hands didn't shake. I'd dressed with intention. Understated suit. Neutral lipstick hair swept back not to impress, but to assert. To remind them I hadn't disappeared. The doors opened. I stepped into the hallway just as Spencer from marketing came around the corner. He stopped short of his coffee, nearly spilling. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I nodded, once kept walking. The conference room was already filling. Mr. Langston and two of his team were seated, flipping through documents. Naomi looked up and blinked like she'd seen a ghost. Claudia hadn't arrived yet. The room buzzed with low whispers, eyes flicking from me to the guest list and back. At exactly 10 Soundro, Claudia entered. Her heels echoed on the tile as she strode in, flanked by her new junior associate. Then she saw me. Her step faltered just slightly, a half-second of surprise, before her smile snapped into place. She didn't greet me. Mr. Langston did that instead, standing to introduce me as Ironbird's lead consultant for the Henderson project. Claudia's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed, calculating. I took a seat across the table from her, unbothered, composed. I didn't gloat. I didn't flinch. I simply opened my laptop, clicked on my notes, and prepared to do the work only I knew how to do. I wasn't back for vengeance. I was back because I belonged in the room. And now no one could deny that. The tension hit just after the coffee break. Claudia came back into the room with a man in a tailored suit and a folder tucked under his arm. She introduced him as Dominic from legal and said he had concerns about my involvement with the client. Dominic took the floor and slid a printed document across the table. He claimed I was in violation of a non-compete clause embedded in my original hiring contract. He said my continued presence posed a legal risk to Bravern and urged the client to reconsider our arrangement. For a moment, no one moved. Mr. Langston looked at me, brows raised, waiting. I reached calmly into my bag and pulled out my laptop. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just opened an email dated 8 months earlier and turned the screen toward the table. It was from Claudia. In it, she clearly granted me independent authority to develop and manage custom client solutions, including off-site deliverables and third-party collaboration. There were 6 other emails just like it. I clicked through them slowly, letting the room absorb the weight of every word. Dominic frowned. Claudia's face stayed still, but her fingers tightened around her pen. She said the emails were taken out of context. I said context was exactly why I'd saved them. Mr. Langston broke the silence. He said that from his perspective, the work I had done and was continuing to do was integral to the project's success. He saw no conflict. He thanked me for coming prepared. The conversation shifted back to logistics, but the room had changed. Claudia didn't speak for the rest of the meeting. Dominic stayed silent too, scribbling something into his notebook that looked more like damage control than law. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The facts had spoken. And every detail I'd quietly archived over 3 years had done exactly what I'd hoped shielded me from the very trap they tried to spring. They came for me with paperwork. I came back with proof. The invitation came through Ezra, a formal request from Bravern's executive board to meet over lunch at a private dining room downtown. I went with no expectations, just curiosity. I had nothing left to prove. I wasn't walking into that room to reclaim anything. I already had something of my own. They didn't waste time with pleasantries. The board chair, a sharp-eyed woman named Denise, said they'd been reviewing recent events and client feedback. Then she laid out their offer. I could come back to Bravern in a newly created executive role, Senior Director of Strategic Accounts. Double my previous salary, full autonomy, direct access to the C-suite. I listened. I nodded. Then she slid over a second proposal. The firm wanted to acquire Ironbird Solutions. They would fold it into Brovern's structure, bring me on as a retained consultant, and secure exclusive access to my systems and client relationships. It was generous, impressive even, but I didn't flinch. I thanked them and said I wasn't interested in either, not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I finally understood the value of what I'd built. Instead, I offered something different, a compromise that honored what I'd created and addressed what Bravern clearly needed. I proposed the formation of a new division, Client Success and Retention Strategy, fully independent from Claudia's department. It would handle high-stakes clients and implementation recovery. I would lead it. They looked surprised, not at all the idea, but at the clarity with which I delivered it. I explained that I didn't want to take over. I wanted to build forward. I didn't want Claudia's job. I wanted my own lane, and I wanted to set the terms. They asked for 48 hours. I gave them 24. By morning, the deal was signed. I walked out of that dining room with no contract of silence, no loss of autonomy, and no need for anyone's approval. I wasn't going back. I was moving forward, on my terms. It wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about control, about standing in a room where once I'd been dismissed and calmly offering a better way. And knowing deep down they wouldn't just take it. They needed it. Because I hadn't come to burn down their house. I'd come to build something better next door. I walked into the lobby just after 8. Same floors, same polished stone, same scent of brewed coffee and copier toner. But this time, I wasn't dragging a carry-on behind me or picking dirt off a broken cactus. The security guard stood when he saw me. He handed me a new badge, permanent. It read, Division Head Client Success and Retention. He didn't say welcome back. He just nodded, like we both knew I hadn't come back at all. I'd arrived. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, and for a moment, I stood still. I remembered the last time I was here, hands full of trash bags, heart pounding with disbelief. Today, I carried nothing but a sleek leather folio and my own name. Claudia was in the hallway outside a small conference room. Her blazer was rumpled, and her phone was pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her eyes flickered just briefly, then settled into something unreadable. She gave me a polite nod. I returned it. No words passed between us. None were needed. Her department had been stripped of oversight. She now managed onboarding for small accounts. The biggest clients, the ones who called when things got complicated, belonged to my team. As I walked past her, several employees glanced up from their desks. Some smiled. Some looked away quickly. But no one asked why I was there. Everyone already knew. There was no announcement, no fanfare, just the quiet knowledge that power had shifted. I didn't need to reclaim anything. I had outgrown the place they tried to bury me. And now, every step I took down that hallway was proof of it. 1 year later, the division I built was the most profitable department at Bravern. We doubled client retention in under 12 months. Word spread not just inside the company, but across the industry. I'd been officially promoted to Executive Vice President of Client Strategy. My name now appeared on every major presentation and every high-stakes meeting invite. But titles weren't what mattered most. It was walking into each room with clarity, knowing I had earned every inch of space I stood on. One Friday afternoon, after the last call of the day, I returned to my office and found a small cardboard box on my desk. No note, just a package with my name in my mother's handwriting. I opened it and smiled. Inside was a cactus, a new one, small round, tucked in a bright ceramic pot with deep blue glaze. No cracks, no dirt spilled. Just green, resilient life standing tall under the sunlight pouring in from my corner window. I remembered the old one, crushed in a garbage bag, its roots tangled in receipts and broken frames. And now, here was this quiet gift. a reminder of where I started, of what they once tried to throw away. I placed the new cactus on the corner of my desk, right where the light was strongest. My mother didn't need to say a word. I knew what it meant. Growth, survival, and beauty that doesn't ask for permission. Sometimes I look at that little plant while I'm on a call or reviewing reports, and I think about how everything nearly ended with a trash bag in a lobby, how close I came to believing I was done. But I wasn't. I was just getting started. They threw me out like trash. I turned myself into someone they had to respect.